Welcome to part 3 of News Channel Nebraska's 3-part interview with new University of Nebraska President Dr. Jeffrey Gold. In this segment, Dr. Gold shares his thoughts on Nebraska potentially returning to the prestigious Association of American Universities. What about those Huskers? Just how involved does he want to be in sports operations? But first, we get Dr. Gold's thoughts on how NU balances the needs of every one of the university's stakeholders. You know, we're talking about your goals and your visions, but there are any number of stakeholders who have their, one could argue 1.9 million stakeholders, in fact, who have their own opinions.
Probably more than that, because we have many alumni across the country and around the world who also have an opinion.
Absolutely, and whether they are an alumna, a current student, faculty, Board of Regents, the governor, the unicameral, what have you. There are any number of opinions and goals that people want to see out of the University of Nebraska system. How do you balance everything that you hear from all the varying stakeholders with what you'd like to see and the types of goals and where you see the university system going, and make it into one cohesive plan? What's the best way to go about taking all of this information that you're gathering and putting it into something that's going to work for as many people as possible?
Well, first and foremost, you have to listen, and not just hear the words or read the words, but you have to listen, and it has to register. And I have been, as you know, during my last decade, crisscrossing the state all the time. I think in my decade, I have probably attended and officiated over 90 commencement ceremonies from Omaha to Scottsbluff and back. And you know, when you make those kinds of trips, as well as the listening trips, rotaries, Q&A, town forums, high schools, hospitals, fill in the blank, you meet a lot of people. And the good thing about Nebraskans is they are very willing to express their opinions, and they do so in a very thoughtful, civil way. And they're usually, matter of fact, almost always well thought out and carefully expressed. And synthesizing that is really what you're asking me about, is how do you take all of that information? Now, the good news is I'm surrounded by a wonderful leadership team here in Varner. I have a lot of respect for our chancellors, both the interim and those that are our permanent seated chancellors, Chancellor Bennett and Chancellor Lee. Our agricultural programs have got experienced leadership, of course. We have a new athletic director here and a relatively new athletic director in Omaha. And these are all people that have vision, but they also have experience. And they, interestingly, many of them bring experiences from other states and other parts of the country to bear, as to say, listen, Jeff, this works, and this maybe not quite so great. Maybe we ought to think about a slight twist or a slight turn there. But we're going to have to come up with some strategic plans for our system, for our campuses. Now, the system has a strategic plan that President Carter developed when he first arrived over his first year. He refreshed it several years later after the pandemic, and you know, that was the curveball of the century, so to speak. You know, Ted arrives, and 20 days later, the first case of COVID gets reported in the United States, and 20 days after that, we're talking shutdown, you know, which, you know, fortunately, you know, we took some really bold steps during the pandemic to keep higher education affordable. You may remember we froze tuition for several years. We opened our dorms, we opened our classrooms, our teaching laboratories, our extensions, and really sent a very powerful message. As a matter of fact, I was just recently asked to speak in Washington, D.C. at the so-called American Democracy Bipartisan Commission on Pandemic Preparedness, and what they were asking me about is, how did you guys do that? And by the way, have very, very low infection rates, very, very low loss of economic progression. As a matter of fact, I can't speak for the undergraduate campuses, but I'll tell you, for the Med Center, there was not a single student who didn't get their degree on time due to the pandemic, which I'm, you know, really proud of. Not that I did it, but the faculty rose to the occasion and made that happen. It was really quite remarkable.
You mentioned the new athletic directors, and the stakeholders of NCN, i.e. the viewers, would no doubt send me emails if I didn't ask you a little bit about Husker athletics, especially since now, under the way things are set up now, the athletic director reports directly to your office. On a day-to-day basis.
So what you're saying is the buck stops here.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. If the Huskers miss a bowl game, it's your fault. No, that's not true. But on a day-to-day basis,
you don't want me calling the plays, and you certainly don't want me out on the field. Just to let you know, I have no eligibility at this point.
Fair enough. But what will your day-to-day operations be? What will your day-to-day involvement be with athletics at the University of Nebraska?
I talk to the athletic director, Troy Downen, several times a week. Either on the phone or through text. Actually, he and I spoke earlier today about the cadence of formal meetings that we're going to have, but more importantly, the nature of communication. You know, I live in a very open door model. I encourage students, faculty, staff. I encourage, of course, our vice presidents, chancellors to reach out to me at any time, and whether they choose to do that through email, text message, call me, knock on the door, I do my very best to accommodate them. So absolutely, it's an area that I really enjoy. I've had an opportunity to meet with many of the major program coaches. I actually attended the annual Husker Awards ceremony a few months ago. I guess it was maybe a month and a half ago. It was just prior to commencement. And I got to meet many of these student athletes that won these performance awards for their athletic abilities, for their academic abilities, for community service, which was also amazing, some of the things our student athletes do. And these are just unique human beings. And so, am I predicting a bowl game? You betcha. But I'll be predicting a bowl game every year that I'm sitting in the chair.
Fair enough.
Rest assured. But I'm also going to predict that we're going to have the highest, if not nearly the highest, academic performance and nearly the highest esprit de corps and community service with all of our athletic programs. Now, I know the athletic programs at UNO well because, as you said earlier, I spent 4 years serving as a chancellor of UNO, and I know that their new athletic director, and I know their chancellor, Joe Lee, really values that. Not just for the win-lose ratios and what happens on the playing fields, on the ice and on the hardwood, but also for the experience that the student athletes have and for the experience that the students have who are not student athletes to really create the culture and the spirit of the campus.
Nebraska, of course, competes in the Big Ten, and of the 18 full-time member schools of the Big Ten, Nebraska is the only one that is not part of the Association of American Universities. 71 universities in the country are part of the AAU. How big a deal is that? How important is it that Nebraska become a member of the AAU? What would that mean? How big a deal is this for you?
Well, as your audience may know, Eric, in 2011, we were in the AAU. We were actually one of the founding members of the AAU, which was founded over 100 years ago. And then in 2011, we were asked to leave. We were summarily booted, to be blunt. And we were booted for academic reasons, not for the win-lose ratio on the gridiron or on the hardwood. And since that time, we have a very clear need to focus, not necessarily, getting back into the AAU is a very important thing. It is a goal the Board of Regents have set forward. President Carter was very explicit about it. Interim President Kaborik invested a lot of time and effort in what it's going to take to do that. But having said that, the AAU has, to the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, never accepted an institution that was earlier asked to leave. So that is a question as to whether it's even possible to get in. But I think what your audience really needs to understand is what are the criteria for academic excellence that would put us in a peer, because there are many universities across the United States that are incredibly academically excellent, that are not in the AAU. As you said, there are 71 universities in the AAU. Interestingly, 57 of them have academic medical centers as part of them. And so bringing together the research expertise, the publications, the faculty awards, the overall student success, the, if you will, the academic spectrum for both UNL and UNMC will make us look a lot different. We already did that. I mean, just to give you a rough idea, last year we changed what's called the herd reporting, which is how the National Science Foundation ranks universities for overall research productivity. And so, you know, UNL was ranked in the mid-120s, I believe, prior to that. And by combining UNMC and UNL's research together, we don't have the numbers yet for this year because the academic year just ended June 30th. We reported the statistics last February, so we have an estimate. But if you were to put our total research productivity together and put that into the ranking spectrum of the previous year, 2023, we would rank somewhere between 45th and 60th in the United States. That would have, you know, almost double the prestige and put us, you know, well into the range of what the AAU members would look like in terms of their research productivity. Now, there are other factors that are equally important. You know, faculty awards and recognition, publications, citations are very important. Number of PhD degrees that are issued, but also student success. You know, the AAU looks at 4-year and 6-year graduation rates. It looks at the graduation rates with Pell eligibility, which is code for students that come from families that are difficult financial situations, challenging financial situations, many of whom are first-generation students. So the long and the short of it is, even if the AAU didn't exist, even if we were in it or not in it, and even whether we can get back into it or not get back into it, those are areas that we have to focus on. Those are areas that Nebraskans want us to focus on because they want their university to be the very best it can be. And Nebraskans are competitive and they like to win. And the way we're competitive and the way we win, in this case, is through true academic excellence.
You've been incredibly gracious with your time. This has been incredibly illuminating. I want to finish with a two-part question. In your opinion, today, what is the thing the University of Nebraska does best, perhaps better than anyone, and what do you see as the biggest area of opportunity for the university system going forward?
Sure. Well, that's a difficult question because there are many things we do really well. We educate the next generation of Nebraskans. We really are cutting edge in research and scientific discovery, in creativity, and I mean by that I mean the arts and the humanities. We do a tremendous job in the sciences and commercialization and intellectual property transfer, et cetera. But what I think we do really best is our connections to the state of Nebraska. You know, unlike many other states, you know, when I was in Ohio, there were 31 public universities and 33 public community colleges that were part of the state system. Here in Nebraska, there is one university system. We have to get this right. When we are thriving and when we are fulfilling all of our mission sets, when we're functioning on, as they used to say, all cylinders, I don't know if people use that metaphor anymore, the state of Nebraska is going to thrive. It's going to have future generations of Nebraskans that are well educated and have had a great experience. It will be economic development that would be unprecedented for the future, which is very important to the state of Nebraska, that we have the workforce to do that. I mean, we certainly have the wherewithal and the skill sets today to continue the economic development. But we've got to bring big companies into the state. We've got to innovate in the area of farming and ranching, and to be sure that that sector of the economy remains strong. Obviously, we have to continue to double down on healthcare and engineering and computer science and so many other areas given the digital world. And that's really, you know, in partnership with the community colleges and the state colleges, that is our responsibility to do that. And I think we have every tool in the toolkit that we need to do that.
We'd like very much to thank the University of Nebraska and Dr. Gold for setting aside the time to speak with us about the future of NU. Now, if you missed any of our segments, you can find them online at newschannelnebraska.com. Thanks for joining us. We'll now return you to regularly scheduled programming on NCN.